welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
You guys sent in a ton of stuff on South Africa, getting rid of designated subjects.
Yeah.
The big change.
Huge.
A lot of moving pieces in education jobs, even like the whole social fabric of the country. So let's dive right in.
Well, it's fascinating because at first glance, it seems like we're going towards like a modern system, even like a colorblind system.
Right.
But when you really dig deep, like it seems like you have with all this stuff, you start to see like all these unintended consequences.
Totally.
So it makes you wonder, like, is this actually creating more equality or what?
Right. So like first things first, what exactly were designated subjects?
Right.
I mean, we know they were part of like South Africa's effort after apartheid to deal with inequality, but like give us the breakdown.
Okay, so for years under apartheid, Black South Africans were basically kept out of certain academic fields and denied certain qualifications.
Right.
Designated subjects were meant to fix that. It was like a way to increase representation in areas they'd been excluded from.
So it wasn't just about like getting more Black South Africans into universities.
Right.
But into specific fields that would lead to better jobs.
Exactly.
And give them more economic opportunities.
It was all part of a strategy to help those communities that had been disadvantaged for so long.
Right.
Not just in education, but in jobs and the whole economy.
Okay, so that makes sense. But one of the things that your sources bring up is this concern about what happens to academic standards if we get rid of these designations.
Yeah.
Like, is there a risk that universities will just lower their standards to fill quotas?
That's a real worry.
Yeah.
And it's not just about numbers.
Yeah.
Will the universities actually have enough resources and the right support systems to help students succeed?
Right.
Because if not, then you're just setting people up for failure.
Yeah. And what about the students themselves? Like, imagine you get into a program and you're not prepared. Or even worse, you start to think that what you've achieved is somehow less valid. Because you got in through a designated subject.
Yeah, it could create this stigma where students from those groups constantly feel like their qualifications are being questioned.
Exactly.
That's not going to build confidence or make anyone feel like they belong.
So it's like we're trading one kind of inequality for another.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's shift gears and talk about jobs.
Okay.
Your notes talk about this skills mismatch in the workplace. Can you give us an example of what that could actually look like?
Sure. So imagine a construction company wants to bid on this big government project.
Okay.
They've always used the designated subjects framework to make sure their engineers are qualified.
Right.
Now, without it, they might hire someone who looks good on paper, but doesn't actually have the experience to manage the project.
Okay.
So then you could have delays, safety issues, even damage to the company's reputation.
Wow. That's a much clearer picture than just saying skills mismatch.
Yeah.
And it shows how it could impact the economy, too.
Oh, absolutely. Because if South African businesses aren't competitive because they don't have a skilled workforce, it could hurt foreign investment.
Okay.
And that will slow down the country's growth.
All right. So we've got problems brewing in education and jobs, but we can't forget about the impact on businesses themselves.
Right.
Especially those owned by people from historically disadvantaged groups.
Yeah.
Government contracts funding the whole 9 yards.
This is where things get really tricky.
Yeah.
Because for a long time, designated lists were used to make sure those businesses got a fair shot at government contracts. If you take those away, it'll be much harder for them to compete, especially if they're smaller or newer.
Because suddenly they're going up against these big established companies with all their resources and connections.
It could mean fewer opportunities for them to grow and create jobs.
And if those contracts always go to the big companies, it might stifle innovation.
Yeah.
And even drive up costs for everyone.
Absolutely.
So it's not just about who gets the contract.
Yeah.
It's about the long-term impact on the whole economy.
Exactly.
This policy shift goes way beyond just changing a few rules.
It does.
We're talking about identity, opportunity, and even social cohesion. You can't just erase decades of inequality with a pen stroke.
Nope. And your sources really highlight that.
Okay.
Because if those opportunities dry up, it could lead to resentment.
Right.
And people feeling like the system is against them.
And wouldn't that just make the existing inequalities worse?
Potentially.
And even lead to social unrest?
It's a real concern. We could be undoing decades of progress.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered a lot of potential downsides here.
We have.
This is definitely a deep dive.
What?
But before we get too pessimistic,
Okay.
let's talk about some potential solutions.
All right.
Your sources do offer some alternatives.
They do.
So if we get rid of designated subjects, what else can we do to fix these inequalities?
Oh, one idea is to switch to a system based on skills or socioeconomic factors.
Okay, so instead of saying you qualify because of your race,
Right.
it's more like you qualify because you have certain skills.
Exactly.
Or you've had to overcome certain barriers.
That's the idea.
Interesting.
It could make things more fair and focus more on what people can actually do.
That's really encouraging.
Yeah.
But how would that actually work in practice?
Right.
Like, how do you measure skills fairly and objectively?
That's where it gets tricky.
Yeah.
But your sources have some good ideas.
Okay.
We could look at standardized tests for certain jobs or have a national portfolio system
Oh, interesting.
where people can showcase their skills and projects.
Like a LinkedIn profile, but more official.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. I'm starting to see how that could work.
Right.
It's not just about degrees anymore.
Exactly.
It's about what you can do. But what about the socioeconomic stuff?
Okay.
How would that fit in?
The goal is to recognize that not everyone starts from the same place.
Right.
So socioeconomic criteria would look at things like family income, access to good schools,
Okay.
even the resources available in someone's community.
So, for example, someone who did really well in school, even though they went to a bad school
Exactly.
in a poor area,
Yeah.
might get extra points.
Right.
Because they had to overcome more.
It's about leveling the playing field.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
It's way more nuanced than just focusing on race.
it is.
It's about creating a system where everyone has a chance to succeed based on their own potential, not just because of their background.
Right.
Of course, no system is perfect.
True.
So what are some of the challenges with this approach?
Well, one concern is making sure the assessment process is fair and transparent.
Yeah.
How do you measure skills and disadvantage without being biased? That's a big question, and we need to think it through carefully.
I bet there'll be pushback from people who benefit from the current system.
Probably.
They might see these changes as a threat.
It happens with any change.
Yeah.
People don't like to give up power or privilege.
But your sources make a strong case for exploring these alternatives.
They do.
Even if it means having some tough conversations and making some compromises.
Exactly.
It seems like these solutions aren't just about fairness. They're also about creating a stronger, more competitive economy.
Yeah.
Because if we have more talented people in the workforce, wouldn't that benefit everyone in the long run?
That's the whole idea.
Okay, so we've talked about the bad stuff that could happen if we get rid of designated subjects. And we've looked at some promising alternatives.
Right.
So before we wrap up, I want to talk about the legal challenges.
Okay.
Because this is where things could get complicated.
They could.
Even if everyone agrees on these changes, the law is complicated.
It is.
South Africa's constitution prohibits discrimination based on race.
Right?
And there are lots of laws that try to promote equality and fix past injustices.
Exactly.
So are you saying that groups representing people who were disadvantaged in the past might sue to stop these changes?
It's possible.
Because they think it violates those laws?
Right.
And it wouldn't just be advocacy groups. Universities and businesses could also face lawsuits from students or employees who think their rights have been violated.
It's a potential minefield.
That's a lot to navigate. How can policymakers and institutions make this transition smoothly?
Well, one key thing is to get everyone involved.
Okay.
Talk to the legal experts, the advocacy groups, the universities, the businesses, and most importantly, the communities that will be most affected.
So it's not just about making a good policy.
It's not.
It's about getting everyone on board and making sure it's done right.
If this process feels rushed or unfair, it could backfire big time.
Right.
And cause more division instead of progress.
That's a good point.
Your sources really emphasize the need for public debate.
Okay.
And getting everyone to participate.
Because this isn't just a legal issue or a political issue.
It's not.
It's a societal issue.
Yeah.
It's about what kind of future South Africa wants.
Exactly.
And that brings us back to you, the listener. Your deep dive into this topic doesn't end here.
Right.
We've given you the information of the different perspectives, but now it's up to you to keep asking those tough questions.
What does true equality look like?
Yeah.
How can we create opportunities for everyone while still acknowledging the injustices of the past?
Keep digging, keep learning, and keep challenging the status quo.
It's a really cool idea, and it's not just theoretical.
Oh.
I mean, look at Canada and Australia. They have these points-based systems for immigration.
Right.
that put skills and experience first.
So you're saying South Africa could learn from those models?
Yeah, adapt them to their own situation.
That's hopeful.
Right.
But how would it actually work?
Right.
I mean, how do you measure skills in a way that's fair?
That's the hard part.
Yeah.
But your sources talk about some interesting possibilities.
Okay.
You could have standardized tests for certain professions, or even a national portfolio system.
What's that?
It's like, imagine a LinkedIn profile,
Okay.
but with more checks and balances.
Oh, so people could show off their skills and projects.
Exactly.
And then someone would verify that it's all legit.
Right.
Okay. I like it. But what about the socioeconomic stuff? How would that work?
It's about recognizing that not everyone starts at the same level. So things like family income would be taken into account.
Okay.
Access to good schools, even just what resources are available where someone lives.
So someone who went to a bad school in a poor neighborhood might get extra consideration.
Exactly.
Because they had to work harder to get where they are.
It's about leveling the playing field.
That seems much more fair than just looking at race.
It is.
So we're talking about a system where everyone has a fair shot.
Right.
Based on their potential, not their background. But I'm sure there are some downsides to this too.
Of course, no system is perfect.
What are some of the challenges?
I think the biggest challenge is making sure the assessments are fair and transparent.
Okay.
How do you measure skills and disadvantage without any bias creeping in?
It's a tough one.
It is.
And I imagine people who benefit from the current system might not be happy about these changes.
There will definitely be pushback.
Yeah.
Change is always hard.
Sure.
Especially when people feel like they're losing something.
But your sources make a compelling case.
They do.
For at least trying these new approaches.
It's worth exploring, even if it's messy.
It seems like this isn't just about fairness either.
It's not.
It can make the economy stronger too.
Exactly.
If we have more skilled people working, everyone benefits.
That's what we're hoping for.
Okay, so we've looked at the downsides of revoking designated subjects and some possible alternatives. But now I want to talk about the legal side of things.
Okay.
This is where it could get really messy.
Yeah, potentially.
Because even if everyone loves these new ideas, South Africa still has laws to deal with.
That's right.
Their constitution says no discrimination based on race.
Exactly.
And they have all these laws about promoting equality and addressing past injustices.
Right.
So could groups representing people who were disadvantaged in the past actually sue to stop these changes.
It could.
Arguing that it violates the law.
It's definitely a possibility.
And it's not just those groups.
Right.
Universities and businesses could get sued too.
Yeah. By students or employees.
Wow, it's a real minefield.
It is.
How can they make this transition go smoothly?
Well, the most important thing is to include everyone.
Okay.
Get the legal experts involved, the advocacy groups, universities, businesses, and most importantly, the communities that will be affected.
So it's not enough to just make a policy.
Nope.
You have to bring everyone along.
Exactly.
And make sure it's implemented fairly.
If people feel like it's rushed or unfair, the whole thing could backfire.
And cause more division instead of fixing things.
Your sources talk a lot about the need for public debate.
Okay.
And making sure everyone has a voice.
That makes sense because this isn't just about laws or politics.
It's not.
It's about society as a whole.
It is.
It's about what kind of future South Africa wants to build.
Exactly.
And that brings us back to you, the listener.
Right.
This deep dive doesn't end here.
It doesn't.
We've given you the information and different viewpoints, but now it's up to you to keep thinking about it.
What does true equality look like in South Africa? How can we create opportunities for everyone while still acknowledging the injustices of the past?
Those are the questions you need to keep asking.
Exactly.
Keep learning, keep digging, and keep challenging the status quo. It's easier to get caught up in all the policy stuff, but I keep thinking about the people.
Right, the real people whose lives are going to be affected.
Like imagine a young woman from a small village who got to study engineering because of a designated subject. Now she's designing bridges and roads.
Wow.
Making things better for her community.
That's amazing.
Or think about an entrepreneur who started a tech company because of a government contract that was specifically for businesses owned by historically disadvantaged groups.
Right.
Now that company is creating jobs and giving other young people a chance.
Those are the stories that matter.
Yeah, they remind us why we're even having this discussion.
Exactly.
It's not just about abstract ideas.
It's not.
It's about real people's lives.
So as you keep learning about this issue, remember those stories?
Yeah, look beyond the headlines.
Yeah.
Think about how these changes will affect people.
Talk to people.
Yes.
Listen to their experiences.
Right.
Try to understand what it means for their hopes and dreams.
Because this isn't just about policy.
Yep.
It's about people.
It's about making sure everyone in South Africa has a chance to succeed.
No matter where they come from.
Or what obstacles they've faced.
That's a future worth fighting for.
It is.
One that's built on fairness and opportunity. And where everyone has the chance to reach their full potential.
Well said.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been great talking about this with you.
And we hope it's given you a lot to think about.
Keep asking those tough questions.
Yes.
Keep learning.
And keep the conversation going.
Your understanding of this issue could help make a real difference.
It could help create a more just and equitable future for South Africa.
And remember, real change doesn't just happen with policies.
Right.
It takes changing hearts and minds.
Challenging our assumptions.
And working together to build a society that values everyone.
Until next time, keep learning and keep exploring.